How should I figure out how to make a New Year's resolution, and what can I do to stick with it? Find out this week on Faith Questions with Father Dan. So what kind of a New Year's resolution should I make? I have to admit, this is a question I made up, but in all honesty, it's a part of my own self-reflection. Sometimes at the beginning of the year, especially after a particularly odd and difficult year, it's hard to know what it is that I'm supposed to do to make this new year a better one for myself and for those around us. This year in particular, it seems that we in some ways are helpless and we are being determined, if you will, our year by what goes on around us in our world. But that's not the case. When it comes to our spiritual disposition, when it comes to our attitude, when it comes to what we do on a daily basis, we have a lot more control over that than one might think. All of the things that impact us a lot of the times affect us mostly up here and not so much in the way that we see ourselves, the way we experience God, and the way we interact with the people that we love. So, New Year's resolutions, I think, are very helpful and very important to help us to be able to take that next step forward. And I think we all want to move away from where this last year left us. The thing I get about most New Year's resolutions, the things that most people do, what do we often think of? Diet, exercise. Those are the two big ones. Most people make those kinds of commitments. Some people make a commitment to increase their prayer life. All of that is really good. As a priest, I especially like the prayer life part, perhaps obviously. I think it's important to realize, though, that a New Year's resolution is about allowing yourself to become a better person. And as a Catholic for us, that means growth in holiness. Now you might think that holiness is primarily about your relationship with God. Well, to some extent that's true. But holiness is ultimately about becoming the person that God imagined you to be when He formed you in the womb. God has in mind what you look like, what your perfect self is, who He imagines that you will be in heaven. And He has laid down a path in front of you to get there, the journey of this life, to be able to navigate whatever waters come our way to arrive at who we are destined to become, who we ought to be, who we are in the eyes of God, who loves us and made us the way He made us. New Year's resolutions are about getting back on that path, getting up and moving forward toward that self-improvement that comes from connecting with God. Self-improvement on its own has its limits because it's about what I think I need to do. The real question is, what does God call me to do? What does He want me to do? To that end, I think the starting place is looking at ourselves as a whole. And we have many components as human beings. We are body, mind, and soul. We have the physical nature, we have a mental nature, we have a spiritual nature, and we have a social nature with the people around us. All of those things help us to become a better person. The way we relate with others, the way we relate with God, what we understand about the world and about ourselves, and how we take care of ourselves physically. For the body in this life is connected with the resurrected body in the next in some mysterious way. So New Year's resolutions ought to be about improving ourselves, and I would argue that the first step is to take a good look at yourself and ask, of these areas, where am I strongest and where am I weakest? Because each one of us has particular strengths and gifts that God has given us, and that is often where we spend a lot of our thoughts and a lot of our time. Some of us are particularly physically, maybe athletic, maybe attractive, whatever the case is, and when we focus on that, we find it naturally easy to do that. For others, not so much. Whereas for some of us, perhaps this social component of staying connected with people, of remembering to call old friends every so often, we're really good at that. Some of us are really good at the mental side. We love to learn, we love to grow, we love to learn and study and to read. I tend to be in this area personally. Some of us have a very profound and deep sense of spirituality. And often, that is where we focus our efforts on the things that we do the best. And that's not a bad thing. But when we take a look at ourselves, is there some area where I am lacking, where I am truly struggling, where I am not very good? If that area is the weakest in your life, perhaps that's where you ought to focus your energy on the New Year's resolution. It might not be as exciting for you in that sense, right? If you don't have a propensity to personal prayer, it's going to be a lot harder to make that happen. But perhaps that's the very thing that you need to supplement these other areas of your life, because they're all deeply connected. When we get physically sick, it impacts our mental state, it impacts the people around us, it impacts our ability to pray. All of these are connected. And when we are wounded in one of these areas in a deep way, it really impacts the rest of us in a way that we don't always fully comprehend. So my advice when it comes to a New Year's resolution, and many of you have probably already set out on that journey, keep going. That's outstanding. But don't forget about the areas of your life that may be a little harder for you, that you might not be as interested or as enticed into bettering. Probably each one of us, if we're being honest with ourselves, could work on each one of these areas. And my second piece of advice is this: take on some New Year's resolutions that are smaller things, things that you can build into your routine. It's very easy to set a prayer card next to the mirror in your bathroom, where when you're getting ready in the morning, and while you're putting on your makeup or shaving, read that prayer. After a while, you may have it memorized, and then that's something that you can add into your routine, a spiritual sense. There are prayers that I say in the shower, there are prayers I say in the car. It helps me to stay connected with God. So too, we can do the same with certain mental things. Maybe you're not a great reader, but there are all kinds of audiobooks and podcasts and blogs on subjects we might be interested in knowing more about. And in fact, you can combine many of these things together. If you do a Bible study, often that's engaging your mental as well as your spiritual. When you go to a gym, that's emphasizing the physical and the social. And you'll notice that those are more likely to take place because it's a more holistic, it's a more personal sort of thing. It's not just, I'm going to do this for myself. It's, I'm going to do this for me, for my relationship with others, and ultimately for God. Because He wants me to become the best version of myself, the best person I can become. So perhaps in light of these little ideas, these little small tidbits of advice, it may help you to have more success in your New Year's resolutions, but perhaps more importantly, to identify that resolution that might not be so attractive or exciting, but that very thing that might transform your 2021. God bless, and we'll see you next time.